got my calendar turned on the right date. I'm wearing my insulin pump outside. I don't care. I'll let the world know. I don't care. But here's the point. What's the harm in believing? Well, let's kind of get into what's the harm, what's the good in believing? You know, I could say back in the old medieval days, people believed a lot of things, and we could look at all of the horrible things they did and the things, you know, I mean, some of the cures, people could come with some doctor back in, let's say, the 1300s or whatever, with some basically minor issue, and they could wind up walking out dead. Well, actually, if they walk out dead, usually that's not a good sign. But they could come in there alive and then leave, you know, carried out in a stretcher, dead. Because the medicine, the practices then would probably kill you. But let's think about something. Instead of looking at the harms, and we could talk about the evils of ancient medicines and how people did things, and get to this point of how did medicine develop? I don't mean the nuts and bolts of it. I don't mean the details. I don't mean all the little details, which I don't know because I'm completely ignorant of it. But I want to talk about something else. That it had to do with, in overall, a belief that goes back from the first time there was medicine. You know, the field of medicine may go back all the way back to ancient Greece, way back to Socrates' days and before, where you had people who were physicians. But there was a belief, always a continuous belief, a belief that exists back then and a belief that exists to this day, that you could do things that could improve a person's health. If someone was sick, you could cure them. You could bring them back to health. And you could do things to maintain people in optimum health. There were beliefs. A lot of those beliefs are wrong, but what was important was that people did believe. They had a belief. They thought this one thing, you could make people's health better. You could improve things. People tried a lot of things that didn't work. And they tried a lot of other things that didn't work. And a lot of other things that didn't work. And there's the history of things that didn't work could fill the volumes of countless libraries. But if it hadn't been for people trying different things, if it hadn't been for people having a belief that they could do better, we wouldn't have modern medicine. There was a lot of trial and error, and that's true with a lot of things. So many things in this world, we could look back at the ancient people. We could look back at the primitive people. We could look back at the medieval people. And we could say, look at all the horrible things they did. And look at all the horrible things they believed in. But you know what? People did things. It didn't work. It was disastrous. And then they changed. But even in that changing, the one thing that didn't change was the belief. The belief we could do better. So when people start with this, looking at there's like a website called What's the Harm in Believing? You know, you can look at all that. And you can always look at all the bad things. But what's good in believing? Nobody ever talks about that. Especially now, it's just so easy to harp on and hop on the bad things of belief. And nobody thinks about the good things. The belief of making things better. The belief of improving the world. That's what this is not a debate. This is not a theist versus atheist, God versus no God. This is not any of that. It's just the belief of making things better. I think about that every day in my life. How could I make things better? How could I improve my health? I want to eat better. I want to do more exercise. I want to do things. I believe in doing it. And I try to work on different techniques. I may try a certain routine and it doesn't work. So I give up that. And I try something else and that doesn't work. But if I keep trying and keep trying, eventually I'm going to come to something that works for me. I've come up with techniques, better ways of improving my diabetes. And I actually do quite well. Took some trial and error. I made some mistakes. But you know what? If it wasn't for the fact that I tried something, and even if it fails, and I keep trying, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't do better. See, I think the one big problem is we live in a world of so many critics, and so many people want to criticize things, that people become afraid to even try anything. You know, you become afraid of trying. And then you give up, and then you no longer believe. You lose what I call faith. And people can argue, again, as I said, this is not a religious thing, but I use the word faith. You lose faith. What is faith? Faith that you could make things better. Faith that things could get better. Faith that you could improve things. See, we talk about all the problems. Okay, fine, we got problems in the world. But let's try different solutions. Let's try something. You know, we don't know if an ideal is going to work until we actually put it in practice. You may have an ideal. You think it's going to work. You're just certain it's going to work. You tried and it fails. But you look at the failure. You examine it. You see what worked. Some parts of it kind of worked a little bit and some of it didn't. So you get back up. You regroup. You reconfigure everything. You learn from that and you try again with a new ideal. That may fail, but you realize you did a little bit better, but you keep adjusting as a result of trying. See, this is one of the things when people beat down other people for believing anything that isn't already established. See, that's the problem. If we only stick to what has already been established, then we don't move forward. We stay where we were. We stay in one place. We have to keep believing. It is important to believe, even if sometimes you do something wrong. You know, there are many times when I was learning Spanish, I tried to pronounce something wrong and I did it wrong, or I may say something the wrong way. But if I didn't have that courage to keep moving forward, I don't learn. I'm not going to improve. It's like when I paint my rocks, you know. This rock right here, this is one of my new creations. It may be ugly to some people, but it's my thing. I like it. But, you know, when I look at my old, I have the very first rocks I started painting like about 10 years ago. A little more than 10 years ago. And some of them look so primitive. They look like stuff from kindergarten. I think kindergartners could have done better. But I actually kept working on it and improving and improving and experimenting and trying and testing. I believe, you know, and I'm going to use my own way of saying the word, this phrase. I believe in believing, because your belief in something brings about a reality. It's something that William James said, you know. When he said the thing, it's a quote I've said several times before, when he said that if you believe life is worth living, your belief will help bring about that reality, will help create that reality. See, I think that when you believe things can be better, you do things in that direction of your belief. You always focus in the direction of what you believe. Believe in making things better. But be willing to change. Be willing to change. That's what's more important. Be willing to change. Don't fall in love with one particular way of doing something. If it doesn't work, stop and think about it. Try it. Try things. If it doesn't work, stop and go back. This is the one thing I want to keep saying, because I just feel like people get beat down with this belief thing so much, that you shouldn't believe anything unless it's already certain and established. No, I don't go with that. How do new things happen? How do great innovations occur? Because somebody tries to do something that no one has ever done before. You know, people do things that have never been done before. And that's how we move forward. You know, one day someone will come up with a cure for diabetes, but it will be because they did something that's different from what anybody's thought to do up until that point. And it will come because people believed. So here's the better question. What's the good in believing? That's the question.